Very good morning to everyone here. I welcome you to the 41st episode of Gyaniki Tech Talk on IPR and State of Innovation in Electric Mobility. IP protection is critical to fostering innovation and becomes an important intangible asset to the company. So join me in welcoming today's guest, Mr. Govind Kedia, Managing Director at Arctic Invent. Govind is a patent information professional who helps companies in understanding and predicting technology evolution. He is also an active contributor and writer on the latest trends in the electric mobility innovation in India. He also runs the Arctic Invent, which helps company innovate and protect the ideas of ways of patents, designs, and trademarks. It's a pleasure to have you with us today, sir.
Thank you, Varshini. Thank you for having me, and I welcome you all for this session. And I know it's a Saturday, and it's in the morning. Probably, getting up on Saturday morning for a talk would be difficult for all. But I still thank you for being here, and I will try to uh, give whatever I have today in terms of knowledge, and also look forward to your interaction and questions and anything that I can help with. So with that, I would like to start, and I think we can keep it fairly interactive. In a way that please use chat box. I am monitoring the chat box on the second screen. So uh, if you have any questions, comments, or you want me to talk about something specifically, feel free. And I will also try to interact with you during the course of the presentation, so that I feel that as I'm talking to real audience, and not talking to a small hole in my camera, which is very odd, of course, in this time. So with that, let's start. I will be talking about IPR and state of innovation in electric mobility. I've been contributing and kind of tracking electric mobility since 4 or 5 years. We have been helping a lot of companies. So with all that, I will try to put context in this in this area, how it is relevant, why it is relevant, and so forth. Right. With that, I want to start, but before that, I would like to see if you all are here. So if you can type on chat, let's start. That will give me a lot of boost, lot of power to go ahead. So why don't we start chatting and just say, yeah, let's start. Okay, great. Thanks, Vijay. Thanks, Shashwat. Let me start. So thank you. Already have been introduced. Have been introduced. So I'll not spend more time, but you can find me on LinkedIn, and I have been working with many EV companies, and my IP mantra has been innovate fiercely and invent fearlessly. Now, what I will do, I'll try to first set the context of intellectual property. What I would be talking about is that why IP is important, why we are here, how it is relevant for electric vehicle companies, what electric vehicle companies has been doing in this area. So I'll be talking about all this with set of data, showing you some things which will also be something cool to also interact with the data. So just hang on during the presentation, and as I said, please put your questions on the chat if you have any during my course of discussion. So of course, there has been a lot of talks about IP, and IP has become very much central in innovation. IPRs, and people talk about, I have got patents, I have got designs. Why it is that? Because it creates a differentiation, right? So, and globally, if you look into it, there are a lot of talks about that there needs to be innovation, there needs to be a competitive advantage, right? And IP gives you that, right? Now, but let's start, take a step back and understand what is IP, right? So if you, it is something which uh, one thing that we need to wrap our head around, because sometimes we get confused with different kind of various what is patent, what is trademark, what is copyright. So I'll try to keep it very brief to make you understand how and what we are talking about. So there are two kinds of property, as we know. There is tangible property, there is intangible property. Tangible, which means which you can touch and feel, and then in that movable, immovable, your home is immovable, your car is movable property and so forth, right? So tangible is very clear to all of us, right? Now in intangible, there are three kind of, broader categories. One is your securities, licenses, something which is on paper, right? It's just a piece of paper, but you of course have lot of value from that. Then there is emotion and goodwill, right? Like you associate something with a certain emotion, or a certain technology or certain brand you are emotional with. So that is again, not you can touch, but again, it's a very intangible way to kind of say, it's intangible, that you can't touch, but it is very, very important. Sometimes drives a lot of value in any business, right? Now, then it comes to intellectual, right, which comes from your mind, which comes from your intellect, which comes from your, various creative and technological arts. In the intellectual, there are couple of broader categories. Like one is technology. Technology in the world of IP means when you are solving a technical problem, right? A lot of times I'll talk about it that we get confused with if you're solving a business problem or technical problem. IP, when I'm talking here, is about technology means technical problem. That what is it that you are solving? Why it was not possible before? How you have solved that, right? Then there are brand names that you create to associate certain product or service, that is brand name, right? Then you go and you create something which is aesthetically beautiful, like a certain car or certain bike, certain component of a car, certain a lot of different things, or it could be even functional. But let's say if it is something which is a very aesthetically or functionally very, very good, which is very unique, which is coming from your intellect, right? Now, then there is something which is, like basmati rice, kolhapuri chappal. There are some things which a certain place of people are really, experts with. So that is called, local talent. That is where. And then there are work of art, codes that is fairly creative that you basically write. Coding like an a science within art as well, right? So, but let's say you are doing a painting, video, website content, codes, or whatever, right? So those are the IP uh, aspects of it. Now, in order to protect IP, there are IPRs, which is intellectual property rights, which is given by a government of a certain country, and they basically protect all these IP in the form of IPRs, right? So with this, I think I wanted to clear this concept of when it is patents, when it is trademark designs and copyrights and so forth, right? So I hope it is something which was useful for you. That in there is a technology, there is a patent. When there is a brand name, there is a trademark. When there is a design element of any component or anything which you are commercially using, then there are design registrations. If there is something which is identified by locals, then there are geographical indications, right? There are a lot of geographical indications in India, especially with a lot of local goods and services, right? So, and then if there are creative art, videos, copyright, videos, pictures, codes, then there is copyright, right? So always one thing that I wanted to kind of help you understand, that this is very, very important slide in terms of wrapping your head around when you are talking about with any IP person or in general, that what is patent, what is trademark, in a very, very simple manner. Try to remember this flow chart. You will kind of relate everything together, right? All right, so now let's do a bit of discussion here. What makes a business enterprise? I think photos indicate and give away my slide, but I still want to hear, what do you feel? What is a business enterprise? Can you try to put some words here on these pictures? What is it that makes a business enterprise?
First one is investment, I think,
Yeah,
or the investor.
yeah. Investment is there. What else? What else? Just write on chat. I mean, that would be very easy for all of us to kind of put each other in that way, right? So investment, Arvind says, technology, Tushar, thank you, that's good. What else? In a very broad sense, if you kind of look at business from a very high level, technology, documentation. Okay, knowledge, product. All right. See, very interesting responses. But what, if you think and take a step back, what makes business enterprise is your working capital. Like, you need cash, you need inventory, you need account receivables, basically money in the bank or something which is basically putting capital on the table. Right? Then you need fixed assets. It could be your laptops, or if your machineries and all that, right? So these are two components. Then there are intangible assets. A lot of things that you have mentioned about, knowledge, documentation and network, customers, regulatory clearances. You can't really touch them, but they are very important for a business enterprise. Right? Intangible assets. Then it comes the intellectual property, right? Which I explained, patents, trademark, copyright, designs, formulas, trade secret, and so forth. Right? Now, in today's world, intangible assets and intellectual property makes 90 to 100% value of a firm. Think about it. Even the new age startups, even Zomatos of the world, even Googles of the world, they may not have fixed asset which are of higher quantity or a lot of value. The value in the business is lies in their data, their IPs, their the network, right? So it's very important to understand when you are thinking about a business enterprise. These are the four main components. Like, these are the building blocks, basic blocks. In these blocks, there are a lot of things which can really be identified and worked upon and so forth, right? So that's something uh, we should be looking as a business enterprise. Right? And I'm not saying that this is 100% or 90%. This is something which has been done by many researchers. This is the shift of the IP or intangible assets value in the business. If you see, in 1975, only 17% of the value of a business was in the intangible assets like patent, brand value, customer data, or software. Right? In 1985, it became 32%, 95. So it has been consistently increasing. Right? In 2020, it is 90%. Right? Think about it. A lot of software companies may have just a data center and a laptop, and they are probably worth a lot of money. Right? So, will employees be there? Yes, absolutely. That is what that is what employees and their skills, right? So again, you have to think about that. In those four building blocks, you will be able to put employees there. But again, employees, their skills is an intangible asset. You may have employees, that's a fixed your expenses, but then their skills and their knowledge is also something which is important, right? So what, this is a data which is very relevant, that as we are growing as economies, more and more focus is on the intangible assets in the business, not in the real physical hard asset that you can touch, that I talked about, tangible assets, right? So that's something which we should be very careful of, or need to understand the IP, IPRs and IP in general, that why it is relevant, why we are here talking about it, because it is getting increasingly important. Many of you may be following up Shark Tank. They do talk about, okay, have you got patents, have you got designs? Of course, it's very important. But of course, business also need a lot of different things other than those as well, right? The good model, so let's say a good business model is also intangible asset, right? So those things, and these are some examples of IP. IP, as I said, it's a broader term. IPRs is basically rights that protects it. But if you think about it, in a business, there are a lot of things which are very privy to a business, or which are very relevant to the business, like know-how, inventions, formulas, secret, business information, projection, creative works, so forth, right? Pricing, how you are, your supply chain works and everything, right? So there are a lot of IPs in the business, right? So when we talk about IP, it's a broader umbrella. right? So that is something which I wanted to bring your attention to before I talk about EV and go in that data. I first wanted to help you understand why we are talking about patents, why are we talking about trends in patents, how does it help, why it is important for us, right? So if you think about now, I'm shifting the gear to patents and IP, trademark and designs, which are more IPRs. If you remember my first slide, that now I'm trying to come at the patent and trademarks and designs and copyrights and so forth, right? And what is the importance of those, right? Of course, it helps in preventing imitations. I think it's like putting lock on your house. A lot of people will think about what's the return on investment on my patents or a trademark. It's like you have to put a lock on your house. I heard somewhere in our kind of community, somebody beautifully explains that when we are building something, it's a natural tendency to put a lock, right? It may be that you are so confident that nobody will come in my house, but it's very important that you put a lock, right? It kind of signals that it is not a free economy. It is not that you can come in my house and take whatever you want, right? So those are the things which are very, very important with IPRs, that it helps you prevent imitations, signals customer that they are buying a unique product. Then there are differentiators that, okay, this is a patented technology. It attracts investments, it creates niche markets, it acts as a barrier to your competition and so forth, right? So see, these are very much important aspects of why patents and trademarks are much talked about. There are much discussions about these things, right? Now, in a couple of slides, I'll just very quickly go through the process of filing, just as you understand. This is not something I'm going to talk about more. I'll go into the more technical discussions, but I just still wanted to kind of give a very, very high level view of how the process works, right? Trademark, as I explained, trademark is for your brand names. Typically, it takes 1 week to file, or even less. It roughly takes 1 to 6 months to get a grant or any office action and so forth. And then in 12 months, you basically try to think about, okay, where I can go ahead and protect my other markets if there are other businesses. And it's a perpetual right. Like if every 10 years you have to pay a certain fees, and then you can enjoy the brand name as long as you are paying the fee to the government, right? So trademark are for your brand values, slogans and logos and so forth, right? So it's a very, very high level process. Design very similar to patents. Roughly it takes a week time, doing all the documentation paperwork to file it. 3 to 6 months roughly it gets grant. In 12 months we always recommend that you make sure that you follow up, file in other countries within 6 months, and then roughly the rights are for 10 to 15 years, depending on countries, depending on if you are paying a renewal and so forth, right? Patent process bit more confusing and complicated, not complicated, but let's say a lot of bolts here and there about their rules. But very, very briefly, 3 to 4 weeks you file. In 8 to 12 months, you try to expand or think about, okay, are we going in a different countries? In 31 months, if you have filed a PCT application, you go in different countries. Roughly in 1 to 4 years, you get a grant, depending on what country, what is the speed of prosecution that you are choosing. One thing I do want to add here is that patents, trademark, designs are all territorial, which means that if you have a patent in India or let's say in US, that right remains within that same country, right? So if you have a patent in US, or if a company has a patent in US and they did not file that same patent in India, then they don't have any rights in India. So you can practice. The invention in India freely, as long as they have not protected that invention. Vijay's question: can you transfer trademarks? Absolutely. IPs are pretty much very similar in terms of ownership as a tangible property. You can trade it, you can securitize it, you can transfer it, you can split it. Everything is possible mostly, right? I mean, if you remember one story, very, very famous, of course, in the media, when Kingfisher took loan. They took loan on their trademark from SBI. Of course, there are a lot of stories around. I don't want to pick up a controversial topic in the morning, but of course, uh, but in lot of countries or in lot of business negotiations, IPs can be securitized, IP can be mortgaged as well, right? So IP works as like a tangible property. So I hope that answers your question, Vijay. Yeah. All right. Now let's discuss. Now let's come to the main discussion of our morning. We are almost halfway through. Uh, so a lot of talks about mobility, a lot of talks about autonomous cars, a lot of talks about induction based, like this car which is basically induction based and probably 30-40 years behind concept stage and so forth, right? A lot of discussions has been happening, but let's do a fun check. How many vehicles do you feel, based on, of course, I'm also quoting Google here, but let's do a bit of estimation here, guesstimation here, so to say. There is a very interesting, stat. How many vehicles or passenger vehicles are active around the world in a day? What would you feel? Put some numbers around. What's your feeling? uh, Millions, billions, 10 million, whatever, what do you think? How many vehicles are actively on the road or active on the road on a daily basis? 65 million. Kanan. Okay. 1 billion. I think, Vijay, you just Googled, very, very fast Googler you are. So, of course, it's like over 1 billion passenger cars. I quickly Googled, but it was very interesting that travel to the street on the roads today, right? So, of course, think about the market opportunity as such for any new technology, any new, for electric vehicle, right? Projected car sales. I'm just talking about the cars. I'm not talking about two wheelers. I'm not talking about the logistical or the big vehicles and two wheelers. Just the car market is around 66 million units, which were sold in last year 2021, right? And so this is something which is very huge, right? If we think that whatever electric vehicle has achieved so far, will it be able to fulfill this kind of huge volume? Probably not. There may be other technologies also may come, and also some way IC may also exist, or of course that would be the best side for all of us who are in the EV business or in the interest in the areas to that EV sweeps everything. But what I'm trying to get at is that it's an amazingly big market, right? It's amazingly, kind of larger. It's a very large market, right? There's room for probably everyone in terms of technology, in terms of innovation, right? And if you look at again, these are the statistics that we were able to find that India is going to be a very good, very big billion-dollar opportunity by 2030. Europe has already seen 137% growth in last 6 years. They are ahead of China. In Norway, I think I read somewhere that their IC cars are less and they have more electric cars on the road, right? So of course there are early adapters and early indicators that yes, this ecosystem will work, and innovation is certainly helping in getting more evolution, more demand, and better future, right? So that's very, very important that we have to understand. These are some of the most common, I kind of, and I think resonates with all of you, is that like you said, charging stations are a problem. Lack of standardization is a problem. I have seen this, and I've been joking with, there will be a time, there was a time when they had different pins of mobile charger, Nokia ka patli pin wala charger and so forth. If you remember those days when there were lot of mobile phone companies, and they had a different charger, right? So there is, of course, this problem maybe also that may be coming in, right? Range anxiety is one of the big ones. Even I sometimes feel that, what if I'm going for a long ride and my, I am down with, there is no charge, and where will I charge? Payment method, how will expensive it be? Battery swapping, when I will be able to swap, how will I be able to swap? Security, like somebody has said, safety aspects are there, right? Now, if you fire range, it's a lot of problems that you feel in order to EV to succeed, right? All these problems needs to dealt with, right? I hope everybody understands and agrees that, look, in case EV wants to succeed, all these problems needs to go away or needs to be solved, right? That's the first thing, that business problems needs to be solved. Now, as technologists, as you are innovators, or someone who is building a startup, or whatever you are doing, is now you have to solve this problem, because EV is a fairly technical domain. You have to solve and identify the technical problem which is behind these or below these business problems, right? Now, think about it. There is, like somebody said, there is a charging time issue, there is a downtime issue, right? So then we have to think about what are the ways that I can solve fast charging. Like, what is a fast charging technology we can create? How can we extend the range of on a single charge? There are weight constraints which needs to be dealt with. Then there are operating temperature due to lithium ion fire. We talked about this fire problems, right? Then there are battery health checks, which is an area. Sodium, somebody talked about, okay, there is a rare earth metal, lithium, which will, how will we solve this problem, right? So then, we have to think about what are the alternates of lithium ion. I've been hearing, I had this interesting conversation and startup which I recently met in a IP conference last week. They were doing biodegradable batteries from the biomass. They were extracting protein and they were using it. So again, now what I'm trying to draw your attention on, that beneath every business problem, there is a technical problem that needs to be solved, that needs to be identified, right? That, okay, in the fast charging technology, then there are some problems, right? And when of course, one thing that I with that I also want to say, a lot of action is happening. Look at the recent news. I mean, astonished by the way people are putting money, the people are raising money, right? So that's something which I want to kind of tell you all, that everybody is trying to solve this business problem by pouring more money, by solving these technical problems. And if you look at, why it is going to be important, right? I mean, if you think about, there is government policies around subsidies and they are extending it. It is going to see a boom in terms of technology development, because as I shown you that the market opportunity as such is huge, then there are a lot of problems to solve. Then of course the innovation will happen, because people are putting money. Um, of course, if you see this trend of, this is only for Indian patent, that if you see that increasingly innovations are happening. Of course, 2021, don't look at it, because there is a gap of patent filing and publication. So once you file a patent, there is a 18 months secrecy unless you specifically ask patent office to publish it. So that's why there's a dip in here 2021, but that's not indicative. That's that's something, just shows that it is not yet published, right? So we are seeing a very increasing trend of technology development in this area, and there are a lot of problems to solve. So this is a very good, I mean, if you think from an innovator's perspective, this is an amazing opportunity to be researching in this area, right? Because you are going to solve a lot of business problems which are there in that way, right? Now, dissecting electric vehicle and bikes and cars, there are a lot of components, and I think we have already discussed some of this. But if you think about it, there are EMS, BMS, compressor, battery, onboard charger, motor, transmission, powertrain. In a bike, there is power drive unit, there is motor, there is batteries, there are sensors, there are different uh, elements to a bike, right? Now, what we all need to understand that there is always be smaller incremental innovation which will happen one at a time, unless disruptive innovation happens, is not happens every day. Probably yes, you can do it, some disruptive innovation, but in reality most of the innovation happen in a very incremental manner. Like, okay, I feel that I can increase my efficiency of my motor by 0.3% by doing this tweak, by doing this innovation. Slowly and incrementally, people do that, right? Most of the time, we got kind of try to solve a problem in a very big way, but that in reality happens in a very incremental manner, right? So, so what I'm trying to show that there are a lot of areas that needs innovation, that needs a lot of innovations in terms of solving the business problem. Everything has to be linked to a business problem, right? That, okay, why I should be working in improvement of DC-DC converter, because yes, it may further increase the range problem, or it may increase the charging speed and so forth, right? So now, as innovators, you have to think from this perspective, right? Of course, these are some components. I think I've already spent time on it. Now, if I broadly categorize, patents in like very broad areas like battery, charging, BMS, powertrain, converter. Of course, all those that I've shown you in the past in a EV, in a kind of a car or a bike, it can be. It's a very big bucket of technology area, right? Now, what I have done, I think you can access this link. I can paste this link as well. You all can play around maybe later after the call. Is this platform? This is on our website. This is updated till September 2021. That you can play around and look at these data and see what is it happening. Like, okay, this is an interactive data which you can think about. Okay, I want to learn what Honda is doing in. Okay, let's let it update for a minute. So let's say what I want to see what Honda is doing, right? So once you click on this, it will take a second to update, and then you can see what Honda is doing. What, so let's say, okay, now once we see the Honda's portfolio, you can see, okay, they are working on a lot of designs. They are working on batteries. They are working on powertrains. They are working on battery swapping. They are working on charging. They are working on wireless charging and so forth, right? Now, these are the things that kind of indicates, okay, patents are coming from Japan mostly, which is fair. They are filing in these different countries, which basically indicates that, okay, these are the potential market they are looking at, right? And this is only Indian patent. Of course, I do want to say that it's very much limited. When we are looking at the novelty of patents, it's always a global novelty, in a sense that it should not be patented any or published anywhere. But this is only to help you all to understand that what is happening in India, right? Just something that you may want to play around and read some of these patents and so forth and understand, okay, what is it that is happening with different companies. I want to see, okay, what Tata is doing, so that when you are researching or you're building your startup on your own or whatever your interest may be, you can align and see, okay, what kind of problems they are trying to solve, right? And then you can try to solve those problems. Pick the problem very clearly, because that is something I feel that, and then connect it with the business problem, right? Useful, everyone. I want to quickly health check and see if it is going in the right direction. Useful, everyone. If you can type useful, I would try to. Otherwise, I'll shift my gears and talk about something else. All right. Thanks, Videsh. Thanks, Tushar. All right. So thanks, Vijay. So so with that, I am continuing the conversation. that of course this is something you want to play around and use this data in your uh, problem discovery, or when you are planning your innovation, and see what is happening, what Hero Motocop is doing, right? Of course, by no means this is a data which is comprehensive. There may be more in all that, but this gives you a bit of playing ground to find your problems, right? So go ahead and use this link. It's absolutely, and I would request Rhythm to also add in somewhere in the gyaniki portal and so forth. We'll be happy to extend it without any expectation and so forth, right? So uh, this is something you should be thinking about in playing around and seeing what is happening, right? There has been lot of players that you may find interesting, like Intel, if they are also working. Qualcomm was there, right? So batteries, if you see that, how they are doing and so forth, right? Now let me go back to the presentation. So this is something which is very, very high level and may help you understand what is going on in the patent area. There are a lot of designs also which gets registered. I also already talked about designs, that there are a lot of designs. So when you are developing a new idea, and you can see what are the elements of the designs. It may So patent and design can go hand in hand. They can go together also. Designs are fairly easy and cost-effective way to protect. It's not as expensive as patents, uh, but but you can think about filing a design on a certain aspects of a certain innovation that you've done. So these examples like the bike design, the motor design, the charger design, some of these interesting vehicles that design, right? So basically, it sort of gives a uh, can we use this site for global? No, Tushar, this is only a patent. This is what we have curated data for all our EV friends. This is not a global data at all. This is only patents which are published in India. That if global, we have not done it because of the massive sheer amount of data, of course. But this may be a good starting point for you to do that. But by all means, I mean, this is only on the Indian patent publications in that dashboard. I hope that's useful. So coming back to our conversation, so these are some of the designs. When you are developing something, you can think about which are the uh, inventions which you can say that yes, this is a very good new design. Yes, there may be some functional and technological improvements, but okay, let me protect the designs also. So a lot of companies develop a very good design portfolio. You will also find in that dashboard that I've shared that a lot of this, design patents happen in various areas, and it could be as small as okay, the grill design um, of a car, stand design of a bike, the mirror or anything, or the dashboard that is sitting in front of you. So there could be a lot of different things which you can think about, protecting as a design. Now let's we have 15 minutes, so now I think I'm going to only talk about some example patents from different companies that we found something very, very interesting. uh, but if you have any questions so far, I think I would like to pick it up and probably answer those. Any questions so far, anything that you feel um, I can answer in context of our discussion? I'll take a minute to wait so that I can collect the question. If not, then I'll continue, of course. Okay. Arun, thank you for the question. I heard somewhere that while patent help you secure your technology and shows ownership, it puts the idea and technology out there, making it susceptible to duplication copying. What are your thoughts on this? See, Arun, I think to some extent, if it is out there, it is out there when you're also producing your producing your technology in the market. Like for example, let's say if you created a new kind of circuitry for better charging, right? Now you have two options. You don't go for patent, and you put that product in the market. Now I reverse engineer it, and then I file a patent around it. Of course, if you feel that it is not reverse engineerable, like Maggi masala or a Coke formula, then of course it makes sense not to patent. It's also an IP. I already discussed it that trade secrets are also form of IP, but again, you have to be very sure that it cannot be reverse engineered, right? So if it is something you feel that it cannot be reverse engineered, it is okay to keep a secret. But if you feel that people will copy if I put it on the patent, it's also gives you a right to go after them and say, hey, you have copied my stuff, right? So that is one question to answer on that. Some LFP patents have expired and some more are expiring this year. What does mean exactly LFP manufacturing in India and other countries? See, LFP, when patent gets expired, uh, see, you can freely use it for sure. And as I also told, if it is something that is protected in US, not protected in India, you are free to use it. There is no problem. As long as you are not trying to file patent again on those things. I mean, patent laws does not allow that if something is published anywhere, you can file. So as things will expire, but if you consider this, that patent life cycle is around 20 years, right? Has that technology moved today? Will the 20-year-old patent still be that relevant in today's situation of manufacturing? In case of pharma and all that, it makes sense. In terms of technology, I have seen that roughly the technology also moves, right? Of course the patent stays for 20 years, but of course technology moves very, very fast also. So your answer, the question for the answer is that yes, if the patents are expired, you can use it. What it means for manufacturing in India and other countries, I think uh, if there are some certain key patents, which to be fair, I'm not aware of any such one or two key patents. Uh, but if it is something that gets expired, of course, it gives a right to manufacture it fairly to all the other. And if you think about it, if it is something that is not protected in Vietnam, people may already be doing it already. That people are producing there and already setting up the system. So it's a cat and mouse game sometimes, right? So because the innovator will also file more and more patents to kind of shield that technology improvements, right? So you may still be doing that manufacturing at a lower efficiency because the innovator has already moved the technology also, right? So I hope that answers your question. Somshekhar, what is the ballpark of cost of patenting? See, it roughly it depends on in what country that you are filing and what is your it depends and also depends on from your attorney to attorney, right? But roughly speaking, it starts with something around 70 to 80,000 rupees for a good patent. Of course, in India, you can get, of course, services at any price, of course. Uh, so the typical range is 40, 50,000, say, to 1 lakh rupees, depending on who you are talking with, right? So, and depending on what kind of technology that you have, what is your vision on that technology, whether you are only going to restrict it with India, are you going for other countries also? A lot of customizations and a lot of factors are there, but if you want a ballpark, I think that's a fair ballpark, that you can put a cost of around 50 to 1 lakh rupees, just as a kind of budgetary provision. By no means it is something I'm quoting a service fee or whatever. I'm just giving an answer to your question. How do you develop the standard design if people file different patent in the area? I think, Vijay, it's something that companies then need to come together. I think it's like your phone charger. There are now two chargers, micro USB and Type C, right? So, but there was a time there were 100 kinds of chargers. So I think it also depends on the ecosystem, some regulatory also, that how governments also enforce these things, that hey, you can't really have like hundreds of charger and type of charger in order to increase the um, uh, propagation of EVs and so forth. So I would say it's a combination of how open the governments are, how open the companies are in sharing the technology, and it's a complex environment also, right? EV, I also feel, may not be now, but at some point, I'm sure you may be aware that Microsoft earn a lot of money from Android also, right? By licensing their technology to Android. So it may so happen that this area also have some licensing agreements. We will see. Of course, one interesting was that Ather has opened their charging patent, saying that hey, anybody who wants to adopt our technology, they are free to do so, right? So of course, some progressive companies are understanding the need of standardization in order to increase the market pie. So I think that's gonna evolve over time. It's probably too early to predict these things, but I do feel that at some point government will intervene, companies will come together and say, hey, let's increase the size of pie, because we are up against a big market. There is a big opportunity there. Right? So I hope that kind of answers your question. All right. Any more questions? Okay, there is one more question. Interesting. Faz, if we integrate multiple patented technology into one, certainly along with original innovation, is it possible to patent the new resulting technology? All right. So Faz, I think there's a concept called, in patent world, there are three concepts, or three basic tests for a patent. One is novelty. Novelty means that your patent is absolutely new, right? So let's say if you say that there are multiple technologies and I combine it to make it a patent. So from the novelty, it may qualify that yes, there were 10 different things and I combined to make it one, right? So as such, there was no single or couple of documents which says that these exist, right? Now, the second test is non-obviousness or inventiveness of your idea. Now, what we need to think about is that how a person skilled in the art, let's say if there are a lot of people in the room, there are 40 people in the room, but let's say if you are combining something which are very obvious to combine, let's say alarm clock with a torch, right? That will give a function of an alarm clock and the light. It's a very obvious thing, right? But let's say, but if it was not apparent that if you combine this 10 different things, it will generate an unexpected result. In very layman and not the best of the examples, let's say if I give this example of uh, paracetamol and aspirin. Okay, so we know that paracetamol solves your temperature and it helps you with reducing your body temperature, and aspirin helps you to reduce your headache, right? Now these are two inventions. Let's say for the argument's sake, these are two inventions. Now the logic says that if it's a very common that people will combine these inventions and say, hey, if I take a paracetamol, if I take a aspirin, I will probably get relief from my headache and my sort of body temperature. But let's say you as innovator comes in and say, okay, if I combine aspirin in a certain quantity, paracetamol in a certain quantity, or with a lot of experiment, I was able to find that these two combination in a certain way or certain manner solves a certain heart condition, right? Which was not very obvious for people to identify or to be able to do it. They were not using this combination. It has given an unexpected result in that area. Then there is a possibility that you can get patent on, right? But as such, if you're just combining 10 different things off the shelf and putting it in one system, don't expect a patent around it, because then patent office will challenge this, that hey, you are just doing whatever was known, you are just combining it for the same, the results are the same, right? So I hope that answers your question. it's a bit difficult. I mean, not difficult, but it's a longer conversation to have. But I hope in this limited time, I was able to do justice with that. All right, so I think now we are almost there. We are 10:57. So I'll just quickly show some examples of few patents.
Good morning. Good morning. I have one small question. May I ask, please?
Yes, yes, please.
Yeah, this is Dr. Kundan Kumar. Very good morning. This
Good
from
morning.
NIT Manipur. I am
Sure.
basically. So I have one question. Actually, as we are researcher or doing being a doctorate, like we are working on, like, let's say some small converter we have designed, and we are basically more focused towards the research papers like journal and all. And once, let's say, we have generated some results from that circuit, and we have communicated to any good journal and then accepted.
Mhm.
So what are the possibilities to put in a patenting form that converter or that circuit? What are the possibilities to go with the patenting as well once we have got the approval of acceptance or the paper, something like that?
Sure, sure. Thank you, Dr. Kundan, for this question. And I think it's a very common scenario. But see, if you are doing this activity of researching to just increase the state of knowledge for the world, right? Um, so then again, and see, patent laws is very clear that you cannot disclose or publish your if your journal is not yet published, Dr. Kundan, you can still file patent. But if your journal is published, unfortunately, it would be like your own paper will kind of disallow you to file patent, right? And see, the patent objective has to be that if your invention has some commercial value and you feel that okay, I can tomorrow license it to someone, then it makes sense to file a patent. But patent activity always starts before the journal acceptance, because patent is very clear on its laws that okay, it has to be absolutely novel, right? So if it is not published, Dr. Kundan, if it just accepted, you may still have an opportunity to file patent. But if it is published, then it may be that it's a bit too late, or maybe you can further improve upon your concept and then file a patent around that.
So
But
it
with that
means
same
vice
journal
it,
name.
it means vice versa. If we have started patenting or we are process the filing the patent, then in that case those results we cannot use in the paper as well.
No, there's no problem. So see, a lot of universities around the world, they first evaluate the commercial potential of a certain research, file the patent, then they publish on the journal. See, there is no correlation, there is no problem. See, and patent office also, I want to also, one thing I want to all bring in attention, that patent office does not say that you have to absolutely practice your invention or reduce it to the practice when you are filing the patent, right? As long as it is it is a solving a certain technical problem that you are solving in a certain way, it of course cannot defy the physics laws, but you can still file a patent, right? So patent are okay. Patent offices do not restrict you from publishing it on journal or anything. It's no problem. So they are two different people. They are two different things, right? So don't get kind of thinking that okay, if I file a patent I can't publish a journal. There's no problem. Journal people will not have any problem, or but yes, patent people will have a problem if you publish your journal before the patent, right? So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, yes.
uh,
Thank you so much for your nice
thank you.
information.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Dr. Kundan. Somshekar, startup will take time to establish business, therefore revenue. So patenting will become burden sometimes. What are your views on this? What do you think on right time to go for patenting such situations? So Somshekar, I know it's kind of a dilemma, right? That okay, should I patent first? Should I go for business first? I would say that the best way to do it is that when you are you have your technological invention in your hand and you feel that that is the basis of my startup, there are some things called as provisional patents. You can also try to do that. You can also optimize your cost. But again, if you are building a organization or a startup which base is technology, you have to think it as an investment, not as an expense, right? Most of the time we have this cost mindset. It's not a cost, it's also an investment for you, because your startup funding, your startup success is also based on that intellectual property also, right? So it's bit of a perspective the way you see it. I think that kind of needs a lot of a longer discussion. But I would say that if you feel that my technology is my basis of my startup, then absolutely by all means you must file a patent, because even if it costs money, because then that is the basis of your startup anyway, right? So I hope that kind of goes in right context of your question. All right, so I think now we are just ending. I just wanted to show a couple of examples on how basically patent actually looks like and what is it that they solve. So I just wanted to show some problems that people are trying to solve. So this is an example of Tata Motors, that they are solving on state of charge, and when the service schedule has to be, right. Then there are examples of heating control, that okay, how there should not be a circuit break, or there should not be fire. So of course these are some of the problems that people are doing. This is an interesting patent on charging infrastructure, on different charger types and so forth. This is an example of Aether patent, and they were doing it. So this is again, very 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 interesting patent on reducing the oxidation or corrosion on the contact surface of charging contact. So think about it. People are thinking those small problems and filing a patent on, right? So problems are small or big, but you have to think in single problem and try to solve it, right? People are kind of solving these problems in that ways, right? So I think with that, I just wanted to make sure that I'm finished in 1 hour, so that Varshini and Rhythm are happy with the time. I think I'm done with my presentation. If organizers allow, we can take few more questions. Otherwise, thank you all for your time. Thank you all for your participation. I really enjoyed our conversation. I must thank you for being so much interactive, because I have been giving this, and I can tell you that not all the audience are like yourself, which is very very interactive and kind of helping me also enjoy the discussion. So thank you for that, and I wish you a very good Saturday and Sunday and rest of the year. Thank you all. Over to you, Varshini and Rhythm. Thank you. Thank you, Vijay.
Yes, sir. So it was a pleasure having you today. The very insightful session, and all the interactive, with all the interactions that we had with the audience as well today. So the presentation was so detailed, and you were able to explain things with a lot of examples and taking so much of patience in explaining things to us. So yeah, it was a pleasure having with you today. Yeah, so I think it's good that we end it now. Will?
All right. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank